Hello there, how's it going, class? So the last two sections of this chapter before we finish out the quarter are going to be involving percents and percentages. If you remember, a percent is something written over 100. It's usually a decimal. So let's take a look at what we are doing. Percent is a decimal or a fraction that is multiplied by 100. So here are some examples. 2/4, if we were to write that as a decimal, it's 0.5. Either one can be represented as 50%. 1/5 equals 0.2. Again, either 1/5 or 0.2 can be written as 20% because we are multiplying the decimal equivalent of a ratio by 50. Now remember, anytime you see something like miles per gallon, right, we're talking about some sort of ratio. The word per means ratio, because if we were to write this out, it'd be miles per gallon. So that's where the word percent comes from, because per means it's going to be some sort of ratio, some number. Cent, all right, as a prefix or a suffix, means 100. So it's some ratio divided by 100. That's how we find a percent. Here are some questions to get used to seeing and the equations that we will be using. All right, there is the first equation here, which is known as the percent proportion. And the percent proportion is written as A over B, which equals P over 100. So this means that you have A, which is the part of what you're looking for. B represents the whole. And P represents the percent, or decimal equivalent. And I know I said that a percent is something multiplied by 100 on the last side, and this says percent is divided by 100. That's because in order to find a percent, you multiply by 100. In order to undo percent, you want to divide by 100, which is what we're doing here. We already know the percent in these problems, so we'd be plugging in the percent in for P. So here's a sample question. What percent of 50 is 25? So we're looking for this P. 25 would be the part, all right, because we know the whole is 50. That's the larger number. So 25 over 50 equals P over 100. And remember, we have a proportion here. This is a percent proportion. Anytime we have a proportion, we can cross multiply. We'll see that we have 25 times 100 equals 50 times P. All right, some of you may have been able to look at this fraction because it's a more simple one and tell me what P is right away, but we're going to have practice doing proportions because they're not all going to be that easy. 2500 equals 50P. Divide both sides by 50. Getting sloppy with the writing there, sorry guys. And we get P equals 50. So our percent is 50. And remember, P is a percent, so we write it as a percent. All right, we can also use this equation down here, which is referred to as the percent equation. And essentially all we did here was multiply both sides by B in the proportion equation. So all you really have to do is memorize one of these equations if you are good at manipulating equations. If not, this is probably the better equation to memorize. This is what you're going to use most often. All right, so again, what percent of 50 is 25? I would write that one as A is the part. We're looking for the percent, so we leave P times the whole, which is 50. All right, so, and then we would write this part here as a decimal. The percent here would be as a decimal or as a percentage. So we have to understand which is which. So this is already a percent, so 25 divided by 50, we're going to get 0.5 or 50%. All right, what is 32% of 125? In this case, what is 32% of 125? So if we're finding of 125, that means 125 is the whole. So here, let me change colors here so we can distinguish. What is 32% of 125? We would write that as the part is what we're trying to find because we're given the percent and we are given the whole. Now remember, anytime we have a percent, we always want to write it as a decimal. So really, we want to write this equation as A equals 0.32 times 125. Because I didn't write this in this equation over here because I just wrote the percent. But remember, this is really P over 100. P percent is P over 100. So if we're given a percentage, we divide it by 100. The last one down here, we have 25% of what number is 11. So we have, again, we're given the percent of what number, so we do not know the whole. And this should be 0.25 if we're not going to put the percent sign after it. And 11 is the part. So 11 equals 0.25b. That's how we would set up those equations, and then you know how to solve for a one-step equation there, which we will do in our examples. All right, gang, so here we have some of our examples. Remember, we want to use the equation of part over whole equals P over 100, or part equals percent, which is P over 100, times B. All right, anytime we are asking for the percentage, it's easier to use the top one. So when we want to know what the percentage is, we want to use the top one. If we have the percentage, it's easier to use the bottom one. That's the way I think of it. So if we want to know the percentage, we use the percent proportion. If we have the percentage, we use the percent equation. So up here we have a part over the whole, 15 over 75 is equal to P over 100. Cross multiply, we get 15P equals 1500, sorry, 75P, right? That's my bad handwriting. That's why you should take your time and make sure you write clearly. 75P equals 1500. Therefore, P equals 20. We're going to do the same thing for this bottom one. We have a part over a whole, so we have 10 over 16 equals P over 100. We cross multiply because we have a proportion, we have two ratios that are equal. Now we have 1,000 equals 16p. We divide both sides by 16, and we get 62.5%. Now these ones down here, we're given a percent, so we're going to use the percent equation. What is 25% of 144? So 25% of 144 tells us that 144 is our whole, because we're finding a percentage of it. So we're going to leave A here. A equals 25 over 100 times 144. All right, or I can think of this and plug it into my calculator as A equals 0.25 times 144, which equals 36. So 25% of 144 is 36. We're going to do this next one the same way. What is 12.5% of 104? All right, now we're dealing with a little bit of a decimal issue here, but we do 12.5 over 100 times 104. Again, because we're looking for a percentage of a whole, 104 is our B. If I just plug this into our calculator, so just do 12.5 divided by 100 times 104. With these problems, luckily, we do not have to worry about order of operations because we're just working with division and multiplication. So 12.5 divided by 100 times 104 should give me 13. So A equals 13. Finally, we have these last two examples. 20% of what number is 80? So we are given our percentage, which is 20. So we're going to go ahead and write that in. Of what number? So we're going to leave B here because we don't know it. Is 80. So remember here what I'm going to do is it's a one-step equation. I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal to get rid of the fraction. So I'm multiplying both sides by 100 over 20. So then I should get 800 over 20 when I multiply that one fraction equals B. One of these zeros cancel, 80 divided by 2. B equals 40. That doesn't seem right. Where did I go wrong? Oh, 100 times 80 is 8,000. See, again, I'm just showing you guys more reason why you should go slow. So we actually have 800 divided by 2, which is in fact 400. Do your math slowly, guys. I'm only telling you because I'm trying to have you guys learn from my mistakes. As good as a mathematician as I am sometimes, I tend to rush. It's a bad habit of mine, and I know how much it makes you mess up. Let's look at this last one. Okay, again, we have 60% of what number is 13.5. That tells us that 13.5 is the part because we're looking for a percent of a number. So equals 60 over 100 times B. Again, I'm going to multiply both sides by 100 over 60. All right, if you guys are good at this, you can just, instead of writing 60 over 100 here, you can just point 0.6. All right, if you're comfortable moving the percentage into a decimal regularly, and we will get better at that over time, or you can just write it as the ratio of 60 over 100. We get B equals 1350 over 60, which should then equal 22.5. So there's some examples on finding percents. If you have questions, you may see me in class during my office hours or some other times in the drop-in center that I will post on the course page for this week. Have a great rest of your day. See you guys tomorrow.